Henry Ortiz. um, I'm a 40-year veteran of law enforcement, almost 40 years. I started out my career in small town of Wilder, Idaho. There was only two police officers, myself and the chief. Um, Moved on to a bigger and better department. Then moved on to Canyon County Sheriff's Office, uh, where I pretty much worked in almost every division there was. The one that I'm most proud of is the one I was assigned to was the Farmway Village, was the old Caldwell labor camp, uh, where we've had pretty much everybody there was of Hispanic or Mexican, if they want to put it correctly, descent, which was a great time in my life. My wife and I, Linda, started Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Got to the point where people were very skittish about talking to me. But as time rolled on, they got a little more comfortable with us. It was on weekends. I worked most weekends. It got to the point where the easier they got with me, they came to my house, and my wife Linda didn't have to cook because Saturday in the summertime barbecues are going. So I had steaks, fajitas, chicken, you name it, come to the house. And some people would think that's a form of bribery, but it's not. If you know the culture, never say no to them. So I would say yes, and I would take the food if at the time I had all my children living there. So it was really great because Linda didn't have to cook. All the good food came to us on the weekends. So it was a very, very important time of our life too. And Canyon County, they enjoyed it as well because my chief deputy explained to me that if things were put on a chart, calls for service were here when I began, and before I was reassigned, the calls came to here. It even got to the point where my wife Linda was deputized, and she did all the runaway reports if I was not at home, either day off or what have you on another call. She did all of that herself. I taught her how to do the form. She would be able to interpret for the family, speak to the deputy, get pictures of the child that ran away, and it was a great time in my life. But things like that, and the good parts you remember, but the bad parts sometimes come into play. I did have a homicide there. Gentleman that was killed, I did know him. There was things that I didn't care for doing, but I did it because that was my job. I chased people out of there. We had a lot of problems with drugs, alcohol, prostitution, gambling, things like that. And I was the guy that had to be the heavy, and I chased those people out of there because the main goal was for those people to live in peace and not afraid to come out of their house, with the fear of being shot. I mean, Farmway Village was a bad neighborhood. It was, shootings. I mean, people would shoot at all night, firearms, everything. They even used firearms against me, which is some of the stories that people don't understand, that once you have something like that put against you, you never forget it. It was a very violent thing for me to go through. I mean, to have someone literally took a shot at me, and wasn't for those beautiful trees they have out there. extremely big and wide. I jumped and hid behind a tree and watched this person, whoever they were, shoot at me, thinking they were gonna hit me, but they didn't. Thank God. I mean, somebody was watching out for me. But that's not the first time. That was probably number 2 or number 3. First one I was shot at as a young police officer in Wilder. I kicked a drunk out of a bar, and he decided he'd come back and took a firearm and fired at me. And thank God he was so intoxicated he couldn't shoot straight. But I could hear the rounds hit the wall that I was standing next to. It was literally hitting the walls. And my partner that was with me, a reserve officer, kept saying, are those bullets? And I said, yes, they are. Stand back. And this was in the 1970s, so we didn't wear body armor. You just lived on your instincts. And mine was to stay by the wall, let him shoot himself out, and protect my partner. I had my arm on him and just held him back, said, if he wasn't going to get hit, no matter what. I was there to save his life. I'm going to take one for him if I have to. Those are the many things that you see, and especially with me, children is tough. I'm a victim of child sexual predator who was a family member. So anything against children is hard for me. That's why I finally, my last job, I worked as a district marshal, and we were the guys that are assigned to the judges to protect them. We wear body armors. We have firearms on us. And the more I sat in courtrooms and listened to these extremely just cases that would make a grown person pull their hair out and run out of the courtroom, how violent they were towards children. And the more that happened to me, the more I started, for some reason, it tripped something. I started losing sleep, started getting sick, flu-like symptoms. I was always hot. My doctor had told me that he had given me everything in the book, that enough medication to knock an elephant out. I need you to go see somebody. And he wrote an address down, and I went to go see a counselor. Within 25 minutes, my counselor, number 1, was a female, and in the Hispanic culture, you don't do things like that. A man does not speak to a woman about personal things that happen to you. It's unheard of. You don't do it. It's just something that was equally as hard for me to do, is to tell her everything that has happened to me. And she told me that, yeah, you have symptoms of PTSD. Yours are, he says, you are similar to combat veterans that I have spoken to, and except your war is different. And I need to see you, and we're going to help you as best we can to get you through this. Immediately she asked me if I wore a firearm, and I said yes. She took that away from me for about 6 months. She says, until I feel comfortable, I don't want you to wear a firearm. And I told her I would not do that, and advised her, though, that my faith is so strong that I wouldn't hurt myself. I wouldn't take my own life, because I believe in my faith, and it's something that's given to you. It's a gift. So why would you destroy it? over something that you can talk to somebody, get some help, get somebody to help you out. For me, I was lucky. I had my wife, Linda. She passed away here in 2019, and that was my ear. I wasn't afraid to talk to her and tell her, but things were, at that point, were pretty tough. I didn't go outside. The only time I ever went outside is to go see my counselor. That was it. And I rushed back. For some reason, I just didn't feel comfortable being outside. I felt that there was something out there that was going to do me some harm. So, which is a total opposite of me, because I love the outdoors. I live in Idaho, so I love the outdoors. But for me to be locked up and looking out the windows, you know, my wife right away said, "That's not you. I want you to keep going to this counselor because I want you back. Who you are right now is not you." I do things like snap at her. I never did that. We were married 40 years. I wouldn't do that. She was the love of my life. Why would I snap at her? But it was something we all have. We call them demons, and that's what it was. It was demons crawling up my back and telling me, you know, don't let her talk to you like that, or don't let her do this. And I'd snap at her, and I'd pay the price. You know, I made her cry. She got to the point where sometimes she didn't trust me because I wasn't violent towards her, but I was mean. And then I admitted I was mean to her, and things like that is hard to live with. I had reoccurring terrifying nightmares. Nightmares always that I had. I was being shot at, and I saw myself die. I would do things like pull my firearm and pull the trigger, and nothing would happen. Nothing would come out. None of the bullets would come out. I could see the person that was shooting at me. I could see the bullets actually hitting me and killing me. And then, of course, I'd wake up screaming, and I had her there. She would always put her hand on me and tell me, "It's okay. I'm here. Go back to sleep, honey, please." It was kind of tough for her to watch me because, you know, we were together since we were kids. I mean, we were just teenagers and going into our 20s, and, you know, to see me fight this stuff, you know. I'd have panic attacks in the middle of the night, and sit up in bed, and I had this thing of just pushing me, saying, "Run, run, run." And I couldn't. I'd just freeze. I'd just sit there. And she'd know that I'd wake her up, and she knew that I was having a panic attack. She just would talk to me. And that's why I don't mind. I tell people this new thing we're going through where you don't touch people. Her touch was always soothing, and so for me not to have anybody touch me is very frustrating, I guess. You know, this new thing we're going through, because I love people that hug me, touch me, talk to me. To me, that takes some of the anxiety and things that bother me during the day, it takes it away for a little while. Anyway, I don't think about it anymore, because I tell people at the end of the day I'm exhausted, because every day I have to fight the anxiety, the panic attacks, you know, the feeling of being lost, you know. that sometimes you don't, you want to have somebody talk to you. But we live now in a society where it's so tough now. It's even gotten worse because we've all gotten busy. We all have to do this. We all have to do that. And they don't have to take the time to talk to somebody like me and say, it's okay, man. Just talk to me. I have a few friends that tell me that, say things like that to me, even, which they don't know how wonderful that is. You know, I have somebody, I have an ear, you know, once in a while. Guys like us need sometimes. It's just somebody to listen to us, you know, talk about the terrifying nightmares and the loud noises that bother you. I don't like being startled. I don't act out violently towards another person. It just, I describe it as taking a stack of dishes and you drop them on the floor. Everything inside me sounds like that. I hear it. When I crash, I hear it. And I have to stop and process what's going on, make sure that what happened is not violence towards me. You know, if I get spooked and people will ask me, are you okay? And it's, yeah. And I tell them this is why I don't like people doing that. And of course they don't know. That's why I don't act out on them, because they don't know me. They don't know that they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't sneak up on me and stuff. And other things like I would be sitting watching TV with Linda, and I see flashes once in a while. I don't know where that comes from, but I'll rear my head real quick and snap my head real quick. And what are you looking at? No, nothing. It's just flashes. Sometimes you see them. I don't know where that comes from, but I've heard that from other people that that they suffer from that too. They see they'll be just talking or just off into space, and all of a sudden they see something and then turn, and it's nothing. It's just a flash, but it just makes you turn your head real quick. You know, sounds sometimes bother me, especially gunfire. Like I said, I've had that violence used against me 2 or 3 times, and even though I'm a shooter, I love to shoot. I'm a firearms nut. I love that. But when I don't realize what it is, it does spook me a bit. But I've been around firearms enough to know that, you know, that's not a backfire. That's actually gunfire. And immediately I have to look to see where it's coming from. So things like that push you real hard. There's times where like I say, in the middle of the day I just fall asleep. And it's because I'm tired. I've had a rough day, and my term that was used, I heard it from a friend that an officer took his own life, and he kept, one of the warning signs that people missed is, he said, his brain hurt. And I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, I do. My brain hurts. It hurts to be like this all day, and people don't know it. Because they look at you and they say, well, you look fine. What's PTSD supposed to look like? You know, what's it? There's no traits. I mean, I'm not a snarling, you know, maniac or anything. Just people look at me and say, you don't look sick. How are you supposed to look? I mean, it's terrible. It's a harmful injury to have. It harms everybody, not only you, your family, your friends. You know, it very harmful. And the more people that know about it and are more understanding, I don't want to say sympathetic because I don't want people's sympathy. I want your understanding. I want you to listen to me. I don't want you to sit there and just say, well, gee, you know, I'm sorry, or I feel sorry for you. I don't want that. I don't keep it. I don't need it. I need you to just listen to me. Ask me questions. Yeah, I don't mind. I had my daughter ask me, she's a healthcare worker, and she asked me, okay, Dad, what do I do and what I don't do around you so I don't trigger anything, which I thought was pretty good. I love my daughter. I only have one daughter, and she was heads up enough to ask me that. I wish more people would do that, because they would ask me, you know, sometimes I hate to admit it when I tell them I retired, because I was diagnosed with PTSD, and when I do tell them that, and the conversation gets pretty short. People cut it off. They just kind of, you know, look at you and I guess I frighten them, or I don't know what I do, but that conversation stops, and next thing I know, all I see is the back of their head. So, you know, which doesn't help a lot, because especially if I'm really fond of that person and I've known them for a long time. Instead of asking me questions, they kind of fear what I have and they walk away. And I contribute a lot of that to today's media. Anytime there's a homicide or some kind of rampage, immediately they say, well, he has PTSD. And the more that's put out in the public, the more people hear, well, so-and-so has PTSD, watch out, or sleep with a gun under your pillow. You know, stuff like that, that doesn't help. It just doesn't help. And I wish the media would stop doing it, because people like me suffer for it, because once they find out you have that, immediately you're a nutcase. You know, you're going to pull a gun out and kill them, and it's far from the truth with me, because I love firearms and I wouldn't use them against anyone unless they were trying to take my life, or family member, or, you know, somebody I care about. So it's something I wish it would stop. Stop doing that and bring understanding to it, instead of, you know, needling these guys that, you know, especially combat veterans. Now that I have the diagnosis I do, I relate to them, and I'm very, very supportive of them, especially the guys from my era, the 1970s, the Vietnam veterans. I support them very, very wholeheartedly, because I have uncles and cousins of Vietnam vets, and, you know, to see them and talk to them, and they tell you stories, because they don't know now that they can relate to you. They tell you what it's like, and it's very terrifying. I can see why some of these guys don't last as long as they do when they come back to in-country, is what they call back then, because of the constant nightmares, the demons that chase them all their life. Back then, it's you know, didn't have counseling and things like that, so alcohol and drugs was the thing to do. Same in my case in the 1970s when I started my career. We didn't have counselors. Our counselors was going to the bar and getting so drunk that you can't see anymore, and having your friends, buddies, drag you into their, into the car and drive you home, or drive them to their house, and we all just crash out at their house, because we've either had a fatality, violence against a child, things I don't like to do. We have unintended deaths, referring to children, stillborns, things like that. Where you have to handle the child, the infant, and make sure there's no, wounds or of any type. It's a mysterious type of death, other than natural. So this thing is not easy. It's not easy. I don't wish it on anybody. It's a constant battle. I do it every day. Every day I have something that'll trigger me, or I see something, or I hear something, or I just try not to take it out on anybody, because, like I said, immediately, if the media gets a hold of it, you're branded a devil or a murderer or something. I just, like I said earlier, I wish they just would stop doing that. First of all, I learned that through counseling first, and as time got on, I figured that it's time to talk to a higher, forget the word, but it's a higher power. So I trust in my faith. So I decided it's time to stop living without somebody else in your life, and that's, you have to trust in your faith, and I do. I was brought up that way, and for a time being, we all do it. Anybody that says they don't, they're not really telling you the truth. I've done it where I've just never thought of it, left it alone, and but then suddenly, sometimes I think that's a warning and telling you, have more faith in what's going on with your life and let somebody else help you, which, I wholeheartedly do. I accept the fact that I need somebody else in a higher power to help me. The anger issues I have sometimes is just, I guess I'm at a loss of words, but it's the stupidity that people use when it comes to people like us. That, depending on who it is, I don't care if it's a firefighter, a paramedic, police officer, trooper. We all have seen it. We've all done it. We've done those things that people would absolutely not do. I mean, moving, dead bodies, helping the coroner put them in bags, removing people from charred vehicles. I mean, any so-called sane person would just, they'd lose it. They just wouldn't. They just wouldn't do it. And that's my anger. I wish you would just listen instead of just right away you put a label on it, which we as Americans, we love to put labels on things, and that's one of the things I don't care for, is they label everything, and it shouldn't be that way. It's an anger that sometimes I sit and not take it out on anybody, but I just think, how stupid is that? How dumb is that? If you really cared, you just would ask. Just ask. Just rely on each other. Those of us that have it, rely on each other. I think we're the best way out. The other is, counselors, faith, your family. It's the best way of, best medicine that I know of. Conferences that go on for first responders, things like that. because you learn to listen to people that they've been there. And you can take away from that and use it for yourself. It's very informative. I'm talking military, firefighters, EMT, paramedics, police officers. I was speaking earlier to one of the crew dispatchers. Those people are our lifesavers. They keep us from getting hit, hurt, killed. I've always said this all my career. They don't get paid enough. They too suffer from PTSD because they are the first, very first line of contact of these people that need help or reporting crime, violence. We're all of us are involved in this, first responders. Maybe we should all just listen. That's all. Just listen. That's all we need is an ear.